Oh, wow. Welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I know. Life got a little bit crazy there.
Too crazy to give a little call, huh? Or maybe just drop a note?
Oh, man, I'm sorry. I didn't think that you would even want to.
No, you didn't think, did you? You just caught up in your own little world. Haven't even bothered to ask or even think about what's going on with me.
Yeah, but I thought that we...
What? What did you think?
Well, you and I are kind of the same. We're always together, experiencing everything together.
So I can't have my own issues, my own feelings, my own life? It's just all about you, huh?
No. I didn't mean that. I just assumed that... Okay, sure. Tell me, what's going on with you?
You don't want to know. You're just saying that because now you feel guilty.
Nope. I want to know. Fill me in. What's going on with you?
Okay, well, I saw this interesting movie the other day. It was about this group of soldiers, and they were friends, and there was this private company that wanted to capture them.
Yeah, we saw that together.
Oh yeah, right, of course. Well, my son got back from Chicago the other day, where he was for 2 weeks, and it's been really good to catch up with him. Right, of course, you know that one too. Okay, well, you know everything, obviously. But I'm still mad.
Why?
I don't know. But I do know that you did something to make me mad. I just need a little bit of time to nail down what it was you did that made me so mad.
Okay. Do you think it's possible that I have nothing to do with maybe why you're angry?
No, I'm pretty sure it's you. Look at you with that t-shirt and beard and that stupid haircut.
Maybe you should take some time to examine what you just said.
Well, initially, that all felt like justifiable wordplay because of what I was feeling. Although now that I'm cooling down a bit, maybe that wasn't wise or fair or right. But hey, it is great to have you back.
You know what? You need to get some help.
No. We need help.
We're so sensitive, right?
Let's have a hug.
Oh, that's gonna be a negative, ghostwriter. I don't really even have the software to do that. How about a little of this? Okay. Well, I think we're good here. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Hello and welcome to the Denver Church of Christ weekly recap. My name is Chris Zillman. It's great to have you back with us. It has been a little bit since I've done one of these videos. I apologize for that. We have had construction going on in the house as we finish out our basement. And so the sound of saws and hammers and nail guns, not real conducive to making videos, but I was able to sneak one in today. And today we're going to talk about something that's really important to me. It's a concept that I've been teaching for a while in some of the leadership training classes that I've been doing for years with students. But honestly, I think it's a concept that's important for all people if you're just wanting to excel in life and achieve your goals, and especially if you want to have healthy relational dynamics with the people that you love, or even the people that you work with, or the people that you're going to work with. And it's this notion of being a person that is not easily offended. Now, I'm going to entwine this concept with that of wisdom, because I think that there are a lot of things that fall under the heading of wisdom, and there are a lot of attributes of wisdom. And I think one of the attributes of wisdom is this level of self-control that allows you to not be so easily offended by other people, and certainly not to react to your offense. But we as a culture, we thrill to the idea of being offended at this point. And we are a very sensitive culture right now. And we are a culture that is super easily offended. And and I think there's reasons for that. And just like all issues of human condition, we kind of exist on this pendulum where, we're always reacting to things, and we try and compensate for things that are unhealthy in society. And so we get to this point for a little while where we got the sweet spot, but then, just like in all things, we push it too far, and we go too far with the thing, and then when we get that far, we react and we try and right the ship, but then we're going to swing back and forth. And this is what we do. And I think that's part of the reason why we have become a culture that's so easily offended, is that we've just swung too far on something. And it's that I want to deconstruct somewhat. Now, when I was in college, my major was comparative literature as a graduate, and as an undergrad student. And so I read, when I was in college, hundreds and hundreds of books, obviously, but from all different eras and stuff. And there's something that I noticed, especially in English writing. There was a long period of time where this idea of conveying emotion, or more so expressing emotion, was just seen as unbecoming or unseemly. Even between a husband and wife, or between a father and son, or just in the family. It was just kind of there was a period of time where things were just overly formal, just very stiff. And again, the conveyance of emotion was just seen as inappropriate. And I can't imagine kind of the unhealthy family dynamics that probably created for a period of time. You probably had entire generational cohorts of people being raised as emotionally stunted human beings, people who did not know how to cope with the emotional parts of life as they aged. But slowly, over time, that began to change. And clearly I could see that as it presents itself in literature. And most likely this began to change within family dynamics, maybe first between husband and wife, and then with parents and children. And I'm sure over time there were psychologists and doctors that began to say that it's necessary for people to be able to express themselves in the family structure. And that became more normative over time, and it became more accepted. But then it went beyond family, it went into friendships and even just public discourse. And none of that is necessarily unhealthy. But just like all things, we take something that's good and we push it too far. We react too far. And I think in this way, the pendulum again has swung too far, because we're now living in a place where a person's feelings or emotional state carries more weight than is healthy sometimes, for a conversation, for a relationship, for making policy in our country and in our different communities. We live in a world now where neighbors will call the police on neighbors because they feel unsafe or they feel uncomfortable. So they'll go ahead and call the police because they put so much weight on that feeling rather than actually trying to figure out the facts of the situation. In the workplace, colleagues and peers will make horrible accusations against other colleagues and peers because of something that they themselves felt during a discussion. In education, students and parents can hold an entire school hostage by threatening lawsuits because either the parent or the student felt something bad based on what a teacher or an administrator said. And I think none of this is healthy. Of course, there are plenty of cases where maybe these situations are justifiable, But I think that there's an increasing amount of cases where it's not justifiable, where this behavior is not healthy and it's not good. And I think one of the areas that is particularly troubling to me has been this place where people are just so easily offended. They get offended way, way too easily. The word triggered gets thrown around quite a bit these days. And a lot of times it's a satirical commentary when we use it now. But as someone that does a lot of public speaking, and I do a fair amount of public speaking on every single week, I find that as I construct each one of my messages or videos or sermons, I have to take a lot of time and energy to think critically about what I'm saying because of the overwhelming sensitivities that currently exist. So instead of focusing a ton on the content, which I'm not saying I obviously have focus on the content, but I have to take a ton of time also just to focus on the way it sounds. because of how easily people take offense at things. The effort it takes to write a message to such a multicultural, multi-generational audience and ensure that my words don't trespass on anyone else's sensibilities, it's exhausting. And the thing is, I would never offend someone in these messages purposely. Well, let me rephrase that. I would never accidentally offend someone. I would certainly purposely offend someone if I felt like someone needed to be offended for what they were doing. And so I'm not necessarily trying to avoid offending people who take offense at me pointing something out truthful about them. All right. But now more than ever, it's amazing how easily, without any intent upon my part, people can get so triggered or offended at the use of words that I use or the way that I said something. And my conclusion on this is that people are easily offended because often they're immature, or they're not wise, that they're not faithful. They don't have a broad capacity to see a bigger picture as they're listening. They see themselves as the center of the big picture. This is the center of the universe. Now, my skin, here's the thing, I understand what it is to be offended. I don't want to say that I don't get it, because while I normally have a fairly thick skin, as it pertains to my wife, I'm sensitive with my wife. My wife can say things without any intent that offend me, and listen, I think my wife needs to do the best job possible to speak to me in a way that doesn't offend me. If there are recurring patterns of her offending me, I think at that point she could probably learn to say something differently because there's a pattern here. However, if every little thing that she says I get offended by, the problem is with me. If I'm easily offended with my wife, that's my problem. That's not her problem. Now, I'm not saying that she can never say something that's over the line that she needs to apologize for, because she does. But probably more often than not, when there are issues of sensitivity, it's my fault. For whatever reason, I'm too sensitive with her. The Bible has a lot to say about the way that we act when we're offended. It has a lot to say about just the mere fact that we could be easily offended. Proverbs 12:16, these are all in the English Standard Version. Proverbs 12:16 says this: "The vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent ignores an insult." So a fool, like, you could tell when you offend a fool, because they let you know that they're offended right away. But a prudent man, a wise man, holds his tongue, ignores an insult. Proverbs 19:11, "Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense." And so, what this proverb is saying is that if you have any kind of sense, if you have good common sense, then you don't anger easily. Like, you've learned to not anger easily. That's just good sense. And it's to your own glory to overlook an offense. It says something to the type of person you are when you can overlook an offense. Someone who can't overlook an offense, it says something opposite about them. It means that there's not a lot of strength there. Ecclesiastes 7:21 through 22 says this: "Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows the many times that you yourselves have cursed others." And that's the thing about people who are easily offended, is that there's usually such a double standard there, because they tend to be, they can often be people who are very judgmental themselves and who are very critical of others themselves. And they don't see the hypocrisy in them being super offended when other people show judgment towards them. James 1:19 says this: "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger." Again, the same theme as the other verses. Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool gives vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds back." And again, just this idea that fools are impulsive in their emotions. They vent their emotions very, very quickly, while a wise person quietly holds back. They take their time. All right. And so, again, this is talking a lot about wisdom and foolishness as it pertains to being offended. What it boils down to from a biblical perspective is that foolish people are offended easily, and they give vent to their offense easily. Wise people are not easily offended. And if they are offended, they don't react as a result of them being offended. I think the essence of foolishness boils down to three reasons. I mean, I think there's three main reasons why people act foolish. Number one, they're just simply rebellious to the precepts of God. They reject the commands of God. They reject God's morality. All right. And because they just reject it, they do foolish things over and over and over again. All right. Number two, foolish people are immature. You know, like my kids do foolish things, and it's not because they lack intelligence. It's because they are immature. And sometimes you have grown people that are they're emotionally immature. They act like fools as grown people. They may not want to be rebellious to God, but they're just immature. And so they are easily offended and they act foolish. And lastly, foolish people, they don't trust God, AKA they have little faith in God. And so they may not want to reject God's commands. They may even see the wisdom of God's commands, but they don't trust God with their lives. You know, they can say that this is probably a wise thing to do, but I don't trust God. I don't trust that God's going to take care of me. I don't have that type of faith in God. And so they do things to take care of themselves rather than trusting that God will take care of them. And in the end, they fall into many, many foolish traps. I think if you're easily offended, you fall into one of those three categories. You're either rebellious, so you have to repent. All right. So if you're easily offended and you're rebellious towards God, the solution is that you need to repent. You need to repent of your sin. You need to repent of rebelling against God's moral code if you want to avoid being a fool and being easily offended. Or secondly, you're immature. And if you're immature, then you need to get discipling. You need to be in a discipling relationship and you need to submit to discipling and learn how to grow up. Let someone train you. Let someone help you to become more than what you are right now. Everybody needs that. And then lastly, if you don't trust God, then you have to do the work of getting to know him. If you're not faithful, if you don't trust that God's going to take care of you, you just don't know God yet. And so you have to do the work of reading the Bible, of studying the Bible, of doing the things that help you to become more faithful, prayer, fasting. Those are the solutions if you're easily offended, because you probably fall into one of those three categories right there. Now, there could be a more diabolical reason for being easily offended that I think is probably more rare, although I think it does exist. And I think it has to do with the person seeing that there's an advantage to being easily offended. You can get your way a lot of times if you act offended. They use the distinction of being offended as a method to get what they want from other people and within situations. And I think that's much less common, but I do think it's worth noting because it is kind of diabolical. You know, we should strive instead for wisdom, for maturity. We should strive to be the type of person that does not react because of insult, whether it's intended or not. We should be people that are strong enough not to be easily offended, and certainly not to react if we are offended. Psalm 112, 6-7 says this, "For the righteous will never be moved. He will be remembered forever. He is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord." And I love this description. He's not moved by persecution, not moved by bad situations, not moved by bad news, by insult, by offense. They don't live in fear. You know, their heart is firm. Their heart is not easily affected by other people because they trust God. You know, 2 Corinthians 12:10 says this, this is Paul speaking, "For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, I am strong." Now, this is a little bit more of a nuanced thing that he's saying, but what Paul says is that I have to admit that, you know, my weaknesses, you know, my fears, my insecurities, you know, even hardships. In all of those situations, I know that I find myself in weakness. You know, and he talks about insult, the idea of being insulted. I know that my and I'm reading into this a little bit, but this is where your ego gets bruised. This is where your heart gets hurt. This is where you find your place. You find yourself in a place of weakness. But he's like, I know that when I'm weak, I'm strong. And in the overall context of the verse, he's talking about the fact that when I'm weak, that's when I start relying on God. And God has way more strength than me. And so that goes along with being offended. Instead of giving into the offense and trying to defend yourself, you give yourself to God. You surrender to God, you know, and that's where the prayer and the fasting and even the discipling come into play. It is the strong and the wise that can withstand insult and offense with kind of a cool grace. They walk through life just even able to smile at insult and at offense. So the point of today, once again, like it kind of has been for the last couple of weeks with some of the videos my wife and I have made, is seek wisdom. Pursue your wisdom and make it your ambition, because you are seeking wisdom, then not to be offended. That is the path of wisdom. If you see yourself being offended, what you have to see is that you are now weak. It's now time to trust God. It's not time to take things into your own hands and do what's cathartic for you or do what feels good for you. Your offense and you being offended, that always clouds judgment. That always clouds your ability to see situations clearly. And it makes it more difficult for you to make any given situation right when you're offended. It's not that much different than having a plank in your own eye and trying to help someone else that has a piece of dust. When you're offended and you want to address the person that offended you, you don't see clearly. And so you oftentimes address the situation poorly and badly. And if you're being honest with yourself, you probably see your track record as that, as bad and as poor. So, if you're easily offended, get help, get discipling. Make it your priority to overcome the state of offense and to not be easily offended. Listen, the world needs people right now that are strong enough not to be offended, because some of the conversations that we need to have about race, about injustice, about gender roles, about family, about the future of the church, about the future of our culture, it needs to have people involved in the conversation that will not be offended as other people are expressing their views. We will never get around to finding solutions if we're always constantly dealing with our own emotional state. Like, I need you to apologize to me because I'm hurt by your opinion on this. That is no way to carry on a discourse where we're trying to find solutions. Your personal feelings sometimes have to take a back seat. It's called denial of self. Wise people understand that, because they care more about the big picture than they care about their own personal emotional state. So anyway, don't be a person that's easily offended. And if you are a person, be honest with yourself. Ask your partner, are you easily offended? Ask your friends, hey, I won't punish you by the answer. I promise I won't punish you by the answer you give me. But do you see me as a person that's easily offended? And if the answer is consistently yes to that, get help. Grow, seek wisdom, get discipling. You don't have to be a person that's easily offended. You can get strong and be a person who's not easily offended, and then who becomes valuable in all discourses, all important conversations. Thanks for listening. You guys have a great week. And here's what I would say. Look for an opportunity this week to overlook an offense. Like, you probably know the people that consistently offend you as it is. Maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your mother-in-law, maybe it's your spouse. Look for the opportunity when you know you're going to be interacting with that person to overlook an offense. And I'm guessing what happens in that conversation is different than typically what happens when you respond to an offense. Have a great week, guys. Love you, and we'll talk to you soon.